Welcome to Growing Bremerton Together with Mayor Patty Land. My special guest today is Larry Iyer. He's Executive Director of Kitsap Community Resources. We'll learn about his 37 years in that position. He's going to retire and all the things they've accomplished for our community. Stay with us. Welcome to Growing Bremerton Together with Mayor Patty Land. My special guest today is Larry Iyer, Executive Director of Kitsap Community Resources. We're going to learn about his time at the agency and also he's getting ready for retirement. Welcome, Larry.
Hello.
We're going to learn about where you grew up and how you landed in Kitsap County and Bremerton.
Well, I grew up in Kelso. Lived in the same house for many years that my parents had built down there. And went to Kelso High School, went to Lower Columbia Community College. I was a math major during that time. Ran into some Christian friends who were in my community college days who were doing this work, anti-poverty work. And it was kind of a walkathon sort of work and promoting both international and local poverty issues.
What year was that, Larry?
Oh, that'd be in the 1970 or thereabout. Yeah. And then that really got my interest going in matters of poverty. So when I went up to Western at Bellingham, I organized my own big event up there. I mean, it wasn't mine, but I organized it and really got engaged in this idea of helping to address poverty issues. And had a good experience with that. Did an internship in Olympia the following year with the Washington Low Income Housing Coalition. And then there's this job opportunity in Bremerton. And that was my first real professional job to come here and work with what was then called Kitsap Community Action Program, what's now Kitsap Community Resources. And I had a chance to work with them for a couple of years and then did a few other things and eventually came back.
So poverty isn't new. It isn't something that we have today along with the homelessness. It's something that we have, it's been intertwined through all of the ages and all the decades of existence, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Gosh, when I came up here, again, this would be, I think, 1972. A lot of what we thought about in terms of poverty in Kitsap County, which was a much more rural place than it is now.
It was rural.
Had to do with more rural residents and with elderly and disabled folks. Where now, not that those folks don't have, there's not poverty issues among those folks, but a lot more of it has to do with families, young families with kids.
And even individual students, young kids. How some of that started too, and just briefly, in 1939, we had 15,000 people. In 41, we had 80,000. And we built 6,000 homes. So Bremerton Gardens and East Park and West Park, all of those accommodations were built for that huge population. In 1951, we only had 28,000. But we had many people that were out of work. And so welfare was a huge part of the existence of people that lived in Kitsap County. And it wasn't until we changed from the welfare second and third generations where people didn't ever have a job, and you were very instrumental in this, caseworkers working with people to find out how you can provide skills, teach them how to look for work or be gainfully employed, how to take care of housing. And then now those areas have been either torn down or remodeled where we have a whole new generation of people still low income but living throughout the county. The first program that you might have been involved with is Head Start, taking care of the youth to make sure that they had a head start. Tell us a little bit about the program.
Well, Kitsap Community Resources and our Head Start started about the same time in the mid-60s. And the whole idea of Head Start is that to provide a best practice early learning program particularly for kids from low-income families who couldn't otherwise afford that. And then use really what's considered best practices for the preschool part of the program, for engaging and working with parents and some social services with parents, helping make sure that there's health and dental services available for the kids. And essentially, I extend a big part is to help screen for delays or disabilities in those early years.
Recognize if there was a challenge.
Right. So prepare kids for success in school. That's kind of the idea of it, to pick those things up early.
We're going to talk about more things that KCR stands for, but I want to bring us all up to date. We just dedicated a Head Start program that you've been working on, would you say 5 years?
Yeah, 4 to 5 years.
4 to 5 years, because we didn't have funding for it. It happens to be in the Bremerton School District. It's attached to the STEM Academy, so that's West Hills STEM Academy. And the dedication, it is Larry Iyer Early Learning Center. And it will open February or March of next year?
I think January.
In January. So the students, how many students will be involved?
At least 72.
72.
At a time. So there's 2 classrooms, so morning and afternoon classrooms, and 18 apiece.
And it's amazing that we're trying to take and give everybody the equality. We want equity, whether you are a bank president, or you're a school teacher, or you're a firefighter, or you're without a job right now. And your students, we want them to have every opportunity to have the same success in their life, no matter what their circumstances are. So this has been a wonderful program. Now WIC came shortly after that, and WIC was more on the nutrition side of providing for children and for families.
Yeah, that program is, like you say, really focused on nutrition, helping with some nutritious foods, giving guidance, nutritional guidance, particularly where there's issues with children. They really promote breastfeeding as cost effective and healthy for kids. And it's been a great program. We took it over in the early 80s. The problem was, with the reimbursements and so forth for the program, the health district wasn't able to continue, and they said, we're going to have to give this up.
Oh, that's how you took it over.
You're right, and so we said, oh yeah, we'll do it. And we had a big volunteer day, and we had all kinds of people weigh and measure babies and doing all the work for it. And so we were able to get the caseload back up to where we needed to be with the program. And we're really glad that we got involved. I mean, it's classic community action, because we are able to hire a couple of young nutritionists out of school, and they just put their heart into it and really help develop it into a strong program.
This partnership, and I sit on the Public Health District Board. And we found that as federal funds and state funds become fewer and fewer dollars, that we have to take and have partnerships where another agency can take over and still provide what's needed in our community. And then it's not a duplication. So that was great. Weatherization and low-income energy. That's a program that has helped people stay in their homes. Tell us a little bit about that, because you're involved, you hire the people. I know that our CDBG funds, state and some federal funds come into that program. And how do you manage that for us?
Well, about 78 or 79, just before I started as executive director, we were doing mostly plastic storm windows on houses.
Taped?
Yep. And we think about that now, because the technology for weatherization has become much more sophisticated. A lot of it has come from the Department of Energy research over the years. And so what we do now is we have staff who are trained in this area and certified, and they go out and assess the needs of homes of low-income residents. And then we will if they're eligible and if the house is doable, still we could do some good for the house, then we will use contractors, local contractors, to go in and do things like install insulation, and we blower test for doors for air in and out. We wrap pipes, and we do a lot of safety checking. You know, we find faulty heating units and electrical safety issues and wiring, and sometimes lead issues and that kind of thing. So just the safety checks alone, I think, are worth the program. But we can then save typically maybe 30% on people's heat bills for, ever, by weatherizing the homes. Sometimes, particularly you mentioned the city and county with community development block grant dollars, they're a little more flexible to us, so we can also do minor repairs to homes, and a lot of accessibility for disabled
if they need
people,
ramps or
elderly.
something.
Yes, that type of thing.
You know, what's interesting is that even in the city, we try to assist with our low-income families, and whether they can have a freeze on their taxes or on their utility bills. And you're the one, it's Kitsap Community Resources that does the evaluation of those families to see what their income level is. So you've got an administrative side where that's what you do. You either can recommend, but you're the one that authorizes who is able to take advantage because of their low income.
Bigger picture, since the early 80s, we have a utility assistance, or we call energy assistance program. And we serve about 3,500 households throughout the county with that program.
Assistance.
And so some of our dollars are government dollars for that, and then some of them, almost half, and then private companies like Puget Sound Energy and Cascade, they also have programs that we administer for them to eligibilize people, and then help ensure that they're able to get through the winter months and with heat. So because we have that larger program and that capability, then we can do things like assist the city in determining who's eligible for city utility help as well.
That's great.
And Port Orchard is also.
Well, and you mentioned Port Orchard. It used to just be in Bremerton because that's where the headquarters were. Tell me a little bit about the story. You're housed in the old Smith School. And how did that school first get built? Because the residents weren't too happy at one time, were they? Or was it the electeds that weren't happy that you took a forested area when we were rural and had it be built for the school?
Well, I think you're thinking of a story. This is well before KCR's time.
Right. This is the very beginning.
We looked up and we found an article, I think in the teens, maybe 1915 or that type of thing. And there's an editorial in the Bremerton Searchlight criticizing Mr. Smith for donating this wooded property. It's at about 12th and Park Avenue, to the city for a school, because it was so far from downtown that it just seemed really out of place. It's kind of funny now.
It is funny because our city hall is on 6th. And just 2 blocks up from Park on Pacific, and you're just 6 blocks from us. So that was the far distance from that. It's amazing how things originally start. When I first got here in 2010, we were able to dedicate Anna Smith Park as a discovery park. And there were only 80 of those parks in the United States. It started out of Georgia or the southeast. And it was a discovery for little ones. We were the only park in that system that was for our Head Start program up to 5 years old. And you've just realized in the last 7 years that the students that you have at Head Start and that are at the daycare center that surround there, they need more physical activity. And I think you've just gotten a grant some funds to change that park so it has some playground equipment. Am I right?
Well, I think you're referring to the little outdoor play area in
Discovery
behind
Park.
the Smith School there.
Right.
Yeah. And that is really quite a story. When it first came up, they just taken to this area in the 70s. They'd just taken down the old wood structure of the Smith School and the remains of it. And what we see there was built in about 1950, most of that 1950s, and it's like a bomb shelter as well as a
Yes.
school. And so KCR has lots of services in that part of the building. And then there's attached was a building that was built in 1979 as a child care facility.
Yes.
And so Kitsap Child Care rents part of that from us, and we have Head Start in
the other side.
And then there's this outdoor area that Bremerton Parks had owned over the years. And we were able to turn that into a certified outdoor play area with all kinds of fun things for little kids. And that you're referring to, musical instruments and water features and drama area, that type of thing. And so
A real discovery.
Yeah, so our Head Start and Kitsap Child Care uses it all the time, but also other child care centers throughout.
Come there.
Yeah, as kind of a not destination, but as a special
Field
day
trip.
field trip. That's the term I was thinking of for that, and it's been fun.
That is good. So now we're going to get a little bit, since I've been here 8 years, housing solutions.
Yeah.
And that started about early 2000s. We didn't have a location for that, and we were trying to find how do we find housing for people that were going to lose their house or that were already homeless. And again, you stepped up to the plate and said we can house it here. And we worked with Kirsten Jewell and the county in order to have one spot where you could take and interview people, identify what their needs were, and help them find a place to live, whether it was not alternative, but temporary or permanently. The success of that has been amazing. And now currently you have Mondays and Tuesdays available for people to walk in and have a wraparound service.
Yes.
I'm amazed at how you have extended that program and the difference it's making in our community.
I think it was something very needed. I look at it big picture as the issue of homelessness has clearly increased in recent years. We need to be sure that our systems are as efficient as possible, as well as big need, of course, to develop additional affordable housing for people. But the Housing Solutions Center really does that. Before, the agencies in our community really do work very well together.
16 agencies that work with that program.
Well, with that one, yeah. And have always worked well together, but people would go to one of us and they would talk about their need. They said, well, we'd refer them over to this who might be able to help. And did you try this and this? And so people would need to go all around and try to find, navigate that. And particularly if you don't have a car and there's costs, or you have little kids as you're bringing along, it's really was difficult. So what the Housing Solutions Center is just one place that people can go. They can find out the resources. If there's appropriate shelter beds available, all the shelters are partners with the Housing Solutions Center. So we can check and we keep up to date on what's available. And we know pretty well what's the eligibility requirements are, although the shelters ultimately will decide what's appropriate for them. And then there's an advisory committee, I think, as you noted, that meets on a quarterly basis. So we all stay up to speed on the different resources and the changing, government requirements and that type of thing. But I think it's really added a lot more efficiency and effectiveness to our local program.
And you work with realtors. or not realtors, but
Property
landlords,
owners,
property
right.
owners,
That's right.
property management. So again, it's extended. Some of those are going to be permanent housing or rental for those people that you have.
Right.
When did AmeriCorps be part of your purview, you might say? Because I know for at least 8 years, we used to have 40 or more AmeriCorps members, and we now have about 18 or 20. But when did that start with KCR?
I think it was 1993. And there was this pre-AmeriCorps program called
Federal.
Defense Conversion Action Program, something like that. And they looked to different parts of the country to have these 4 pilot programs. And we were chosen as one. We partnered with our state to apply competitively. And what it did is it gave us a chance to create and try out this concept of providing volunteer opportunities for people who wanted to commit to the community. They would essentially commit 10 months a year, get a small stipend, and work with existing organizations to improve the community. So we did, I think it was 1993, we were able to do that and develop that program. And then when AmeriCorps started in 1994, give or take a year,
Sure.
we were well positioned then to successfully compete for national community action, AmeriCorps funds. And pretty much we've been able to receive funds ever since that time. And in those early days, we were able to get lots of.
And we needed them in the early days too.
Yeah.
Even now, though, some work with our Parks Department, some work with the different school districts because they'll be in the classroom, they'll do tutoring, and then they have an opportunity to get a check for their education to help them further their education, and so many of them have done that.
Right, an educational award they call it, and so if they put in the full 1,700 hours in the course of the year, then they'll earn that education award, and that can be used to pay for college or post-high school expenses related to education, or pay college debts, or it can also now be used, say a grandparent or another family member were to participate, and they can transfer that to, let's say, a grandchild or another
A family member.
Yeah, I can't remember the limits of it, but a close family member. So there's lots of benefits for that, and also for the AmeriCorps team members. Oftentimes, if they're not sure where they want to head within their field, this is a good chance to try that out.
It's like a dress rehearsal.
And really develop that sense of community service, which we all want to promote, whether we're working elsewhere or not, to have people get engaged. I know that's a big priority of yours too, to get
volunteer.
people engaged and volunteer in our communities.
It's what really makes our community strong, is to have that. I go to the graduations and I'm always amazed at the peer group. So if there's 20 or no matter who's in the program, they select one person that is outstanding. The person that's there first or they're late or has really made a difference in their own growth or with the team. And it's remarkable. I mean, it's such a positive thing. You also do some job resources. I talk about workforce development, people that are changing jobs, or if they've been homeless and they've been out of work and they don't have some skills. You have those capabilities, again, at KCR. So they can come in and learn how to do resumes or applications online, work with the computer. So you are really a full service. The entire community rests in your hands.
Well, we really, over the years, have identified those things those services that we think really make a difference in helping people move in their life, particularly those that are low income and need some extra support. And the Workforce Investment Act is what funds this. But at our South Kitsap Center, multi-services center just outside of Port Orchard, we have a WorkSource affiliate location. And so we've got computers there, a computer lab, and we do classes on a regular basis. And as you say, we help people go to a trade school or a community college.
Get some more skill.
Get what they need, and then place them into employment.
You mentioned Port Orchard again because you are not just in Bremerton. You're in Port Orchard.
Yes.
And are you in Paulsbo?
We are. So our service area is all of Kitsap County.
Yes, it
and
is.
it always has been. But our centers have tended to be more in Bremerton historically. So 10, 12 years ago, we opened up a little rental place in downtown Port Orchard. And then we found the need was such that we were able to build and have a nice new facility that I was just alluding to near Jackson Lund,
right,
there in Port Orchard.
I went to that grand opening.
Yes. So in the north end, we looked at the needs up there and the partners and so forth, and we decided just in our last strategic plan, we wanted to be more visible and better able to serve North Kitsap and Bainbridge residents.
That's great.
And so, but it didn't make sense to us to build a building. And in fact, now North Kitsap Fish Line is planning to build.
You're going to be
a building,
part
and,
of
and we're going to be part of that. Then we also we have an energy assistance site at Gateway Church in Paulsbo. We Housing Solutions Center has an office. We're with right now with Fish Line in their existing building, and then also with Bainbridge, with the helpline on Bainbridge.
Right.
And we have energy assistance, a staff member in Kingston, Gateway, Paulsbo, and then also on Bainbridge.
That makes it easy for people to navigate where they're living, and they don't have to all come down into Bremerton.
Yeah, no, that's important.
We've covered so many things that you're responsible for, Larry, and I just want to close with the BEST program. Because we used to have Washington Cash. Washington Cash was funded from either the federal or the state, and then the funding went away, and we found it was very, very important with our recession. So hundreds of people have graduated. I know that men, women, if they had a skill or they lost their job and they still knew how to roof, that they could start their own business. So BEST is business, education, service training.
Yes.
And since we're wrapping down at the end of this program, if people want to know about anything, the BEST program or WIC or Head Start, how do they get a hold of you? We're going to flash this on the screen as well.
Okay. Well, they can call us at 360-377-0053, or they can call us at 360-478-2301. Those are kind of our two main numbers. We've got a website up at kcr.org. That's a good source of information as well. So
we didn't get much about your retirement, but you have how many years?
Well, I've worked 39 years in this job.
39 years.
And it's been a great career. I've had so many opportunities to do things that I involved in so many areas.
And the city and the community and the county are all appreciative of your time serving in Kitsap Community Resources. Larry, thank you for being my guest. I know you'll have time to relax, and you'll find throughout the city, wherever they traverse, that your fingerprints are all over. You've made a difference, and I personally thank you, and I know that the audience thanks you.
Yeah,
hopefully you've learned about these resources that we've had all along for these number of years, the man behind the scenes, and I look forward to seeing you next time with Growing Bremerton Together and Mayor Patty Lent. Thanks, Larry.